Okay, so another thing our customer has requested is that we remove the engine, paint up some of these different heat shields and whatnot, and replace the tar board behind the engine, just to clean up the engine bay to get it looking real nice for the prospective buyer. So we will do that. I'll give you guys a quick little look at what it looks like, and we'll pull her out. Okay, we have removed the fan shroud, sitting right over here. We're going to paint this side of it so that it looks nice and good for the customer. We're going to paint the exposed sections of these shrouds right here. They're going to be kind of tricky to get off, so I think I'm gonna paint them on the car, unfortunately. But yeah, we're coming along. Let's see the primer that Pop's got on there. It looks good.
You gotta put it on pretty light. You don't wanna overdo it.
Okay, here on the exhaust we can see just how corroded and gnarly these bolts are. Unfortunately, I had to cut all 4 of them off where it bolts to the heater boxes. And so this EGR tube side that had been broken off, I'll have to cut these off probably. I'm gonna try and make them work, but we'll see. Oh, we've gone from this to that. Nice and shiny. We are on the Super Beetle, and we have all this garbage down here. This nasty tar board that we removed. And this, our brand new shiny, squeaky clean tar board. That has been color changed as per our customer's request. We also did a really basic throttle cable repair. It was starting to fray, and to keep it from fraying, we put some JB weld around it, and then heat shrunk it to make sure that it does not fray anymore. Not bad enough to where I would have, you know, replaced the whole cable. Plus, I don't want to wait for it to come in, and I need to get this car off the lift. So there you can see how it's kind of chunky right here. It's because it's got JB weld right there. And then yeah, just that heat shrink over it. Come over here. We have placed both of our intakes back on after cleaning them, cleaning the mating surfaces, putting the fuel resistant gasket dressing on them on both ends, even on the this end right here. We have done something to remedy kind of an issue that we were having before. Somebody had replaced a hose kind of similar to the issues with the evap hoses. This hose right here had broken, and it was a hose that was pre-molded with a 90. And somebody had just shoved the hose underneath. Instead of they'd shoved the hose under here and connected it to here. So what we have done is we have taken a copper fitting and made out of copper a 90, and then epoxied it to the location where it goes. So now we'll be able just to put a nice hose on it, and it'll go like that. And we won't have to worry about it being kinked underneath here. And this is for the this is for your crankcase vapors to go back into the engine and be burned. So let's get this shroud back on. And just like that, she's mostly back together. Okay, so we're torquing this fan nut to spec real quick. Goes to 47 foot-pounds. Stay there. We had Dad holding this backside, and you can see that this fan belt now has some. You can come off now. We held that there. You can see this fan belt now has its tension that it needs, and everything's torqued to spec. So this thing is about ready to go in. We have just a couple more wires and whatnot to put in, and she'll be ready to go. Okay, so we are installing this motor with a transmission jack because it's way easier. So as you can see, we've got it close to splining up, but we've got it rotated at an angle. We're getting ready to jack up a little bit so that we can then spline onto that shaft the right way. Here you can see our transmission bolt is almost ready to spline on. Same thing with the input shaft. So we're gonna do a little bit of finagling under here. We're gonna take off these two arms right now that we're keeping it from falling forward, that Dad's loosening. And once we get these out and that one out, we'll be able to slide the transmission and the engine together better. I'm going to spin it here. It's gonna transmission. It was line stuff. On the passenger rear of this car, somebody has installed some aftermarket rear discs. Pretty cool looking, but we have one major issue. If you look right here, you can see that the rotor has been contacting and is contacting this caliper. You can see all the metal shavings from the caliper, from the contact between the two. And what I believe the issue is that somebody has placed a spacer right in between here where it's not supposed to be, pushing this piece further this way. So we'll get this apart and see what's going on. So we got this off, and lo and behold, there were two washers that were there that weren't supposed to be there. So we will get those put on the right side and she'll be ready to go. We have those two washers moved where they need to be on this outside edge now. And if you look here, we have clearance. You can see light between the rotor and the caliper bracket, which is exactly what you want. So thank goodness that's all it needed. Another thing we had to do was when we got this car and I went to take the starter off, there was only one bolt holding it on, the lower one. The upper bolt, which is this one, was just sitting there, completely loose. And I think what the problem was is that somebody had tried to put it in here, and all the starters back in the day used to be a lot bigger, but they've since made them smaller. And if you see this line right here where we've welded on, it used to be that big. And we have added this whole section here. And what that does is that keeps this thing from being able to spin. So that when you put your nut on the other side, it actually tightens and doesn't just free spin. So somebody probably put this in here and it was able to just spin around like this, and that nut worked itself loose. And the starter was only being held on by one bolt. And this starter bolt also is an engine to transmission bolt. So important that that gets taken care of. Under here on the Super Beetle, we have the fuel lines clamped off right now. that red guy right there. I have one on both the return and the supply because I couldn't really tell which one was which. I know now that that upper one is the hose I'm dealing with. So why I've done that is so that I could disconnect this fuel line right here, because as you can see, kind of 2 inches up it, about right there, is heavily frayed and cracking and swollen. The previous person who worked on this replaced various hoses but didn't do this one. So I've clamped up those lines so that I can change this line right here, and it goes up right there. You can see that brass nipple. That's next to the starter. That's where it connects, and it just comes from a hard line right here, and it is the lower of the two. And guess what? That clamp right there, this clamp, I did not loosen it, and it wasn't even sitting up here like that. It was just back here like that. So kind of scary. Could have been a fire, whatever. As you can see, we've replaced this hose right here. It goes all the way up and over to here now. You can see up by the starter. Show you real quick what we were dealing with and just kind of how scary it was. So here's our new hose. This is 5/16 fuel hose, 50 psi rated, so it can be ran on these low pressure fuel systems. But look at the old hose. Look how swollen that is. I mean, they replaced some hoses on this, but not other ones, and I don't know why they didn't do this one. The scary thing about this one is this section right here. If you look at it, so it wasn't broken like this when I took it off, but I barely touched it and it cracked open right there. Just from kind of heat, stress, and fatigue. And I mean, that's the inside of the hose right there. That is just a fire waiting to happen. So make sure when you're doing stuff, you check everything out. Make sure you get everything that's bad. So we're all done, guys. Back on the ground. Brakes are all put back together. We've got this guy all nice and detailed in here. You can see we've got the tar board painted. We have the shrouds and the blower assembly housing is all painted. Everything's cleaned. Obviously we didn't do a full restoration and, you know, paint everything in here, but enough that this customer will, you know, be able to get some lookers in here. If you come along to the front, inside the passenger compartment, we have lubricated this hood release lever, both spots, so that it pops open pretty easily now. And you can see that this opens, and if you watch the hood go up, nice and smooth, like a modern car. All thanks to those hood struts we have up in there on both sides. And you can see they're kind of covered up, and we've got our evap lines running. But she'll close nice and easy for us, and there she goes. So we're done.